Welcome, Chris. We are so excited to have you. Another episode for Sales Beast today. I'd love to just get started, hear from you on who you are, what you've got going on in your life, and why we've brought you here today.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me. It's been great getting to know you guys over I guess years now. But yeah, so I live in Portland, Oregon. I always think about myself as a real estate agent first, and being a real estate agent has opened up some doors of opportunity. I own multiple brokerages in the state of Oregon. Had the opportunity to launch brokerages outside of the United States, down in Costa Rica, and we'll probably get to that at some point in time about why there and what that led to, and began to expand our business across the country, gosh, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Today, about a year or so ago, I partnered with a good friend of mine, Ben Kinney, and we launched a brand new platform called Place. And really that's a platform for top agents to plug into and continue to build their businesses in a profitable way. So last year, 2020, that network closed about $2 billion worth of real estate. We served just under, right around 6,000 families across multiple cities and states. We did about 60 million in gross commission income, or we refer to that as revenue. So about a $60 million revenue, and that's just the real estate side of the business. We began to launch ancillary services, so mortgage and title, and obviously we have tech companies and coaching companies as well. But I'll tell you guys, all that really is actually just a vehicle for me to continue to deliver what I believe my platform is. And my platform is to build just phenomenally experiential lives while building big businesses. And so actually earlier this year, we launched our podcast as well, called Experience Growth. And honestly, less business and more really just sort of building on what I call the 6 pillars of our life. So for me, business is awesome. I love it. I love building business. It could be any business. My true north has always been real estate. But in the process, I think just the message that I like to deliver is we can build experiential lives and have an awesome time doing it while also managing and dealing and growing and building and servicing hundreds and thousands of people in business as well.
That's awesome. Huge numbers there. That part I can somewhat understand. It in Canada, we have no teams that operate on a level that high. But yeah, I'm very impressed by that. But more than diving into that, I'd love to know what experiential living is and how that's impacted maybe some of the boots on the ground people in your organization. Yeah. Why is that what you strive for?
I think oftentimes life missions come from your biggest problems, right? You wake up one day and you realize things aren't exactly how you want them to be. And so some of us take a step and say, gosh, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to figure out how to fix this. And I think that's really where I found myself a couple times over a decade ago. I had built a business, loved the business. It was real estate, right? In a different town and got to a place where I felt like the business controlled every minute of every day. And as successful as the business was, like the business made more money than I had time to spend. And nor did I really care about spending it to begin with, because I'm a pretty simple guy. And so I woke up one day and realized, well, maybe my wife woke me up one day and realized that, gosh, like you clearly love your business and you're married to it. And unfortunately in life, you can't be married to 2 things. Like you only get to be married to one, right? At least in my world. And I really had to just come to this point and decide, well, who do I want to be married to, or what do I want to be married to? And I chose family over business and literally shut the business down, moved away so it wouldn't attract me back, and decided that I would get out of real estate altogether or figure out a way where my career and my job didn't control me or didn't mean so much to me. And honestly, guys, I think I woke up one day and realized that that wasn't the problem. Like it meaning like job and career and personal development meaning something to me wasn't the problem. It was that I actually hadn't worked on what I call the 6 pillars of my life. Like I had worked on my career, right? That's the first pillar. But I hadn't really spent enough time working on my relationships, which I believe is the second pillar, my wealth, true wealth, which is a third pillar, personal growth, my fourth pillar, health, my fifth pillar, and spirituality, my sixth pillar. So the problem is I had this massive career pillar, but my other pillars to my house, or the foundation, like what I was setting my life on top of, it was just uneven. And so for me, I really began searching for a place where I could find some stability to do all of it. And honestly, you guys, and we met through the Keller Williams ecosystem, right? And ultimately, I chose to move to that ecosystem, not because of anything other than it had a business model that allowed me to really focus on all 6 pillars, when and how often and how much I wanted to or needed to. So really that that to me is experiential living. I think at times some of those pillars will be drivers for us. Some of those pillars will be maintainers for us as well. And some of those we are just sustainers. Like we need to sustain it, we need to maintain it, or we need to step into drive mode on that specific pillar. And that comes at different times in our life.
Thanks, Chris. And so with those 6 pillars, obviously we're all leaders here at different levels. How do you maintain those 6 pillars? Is that something that, you're scheduling into your calendar? How are you doing like monthly check-ins? Like, how is my career going? How are my relationships going? What are some of the things that you do to ensure that your pillars are standing strong and successful?
Yeah, I think what's rewarded is repeated. That's an Andy Stanley sort of thesis. And I think oftentimes because we don't reward health, we don't reward our growth in spirituality, we don't reward the fact that we're building relationships, then we don't repeat the activities that it takes to get there. What we're rewarded in pretty easily and quickly, especially in the real estate industry, is our career. Like we sell a house, we get a big reward. And so we repeat it. What's rewarded is repeated. And so for me, I have specific goals, and I actually have a specific growth plan around each one of those pillars. Like, what do I want to accomplish in my career this year? What do I want to accomplish in my relationships, and how am I going to do that this year? What about my wealth? Like, and wealth could be assets, it could be net worth, it could be a lot of things, right? So wealth for me isn't just money, because honestly, at a certain point in time, we'll make more than we can spend. And I don't spend a lot, so truly I don't really need to make any more money. So money, if wealth equaled money, then I'd be done, and that pillar would be built. And I don't believe that that's true. Personal growth, like what do I need to learn this year? Like where do I need to grow? Like where do I feel like I'm weak personally? And then what is my health goal this year? And what are my spirituality goals this year? And I put them on a right. I have a form, right? I have a form that I fill out in each one of those pillars. I have a class that I teach as well around those 6 pillars. And then I move towards them each year. And I think unless we do that, one of them is going to get lost at some point in time. Like think about 2020. Like as we look back, the fact is man, there's a lot of stuff that could have gotten forgotten because we just focused on survival, or we just focused on like the one thing in front of us at a certain point in time. So for me, it's being present in those 6. And then truly, I build my reading schedule around those topics, and I make sure that I'm reading about each one of them as well. And sort of I categorize, what books have I read around health? What books have I read for personal growth? What books have I read around spirituality? And how much time am I spending in each one of those things?
Yeah, sometimes I find when we're in the world of selling houses, in the beginning it's great, you get that big adrenaline rush when you sell a house, and then maybe the next time it's less and less and less, and sure, I still get a level of fulfillment from selling houses, but as you progress, you get a greater level of fulfillment from passing along that skill to others and from personal growth and introducing those concepts to other people. Before I joined Keller Williams, those aren't things that even entered my mind. So when it comes to personal growth for you and the people you lead, what exactly does that look like? I know you mentioned reading books around the pillars. Anything else you do or encourage your team to do?
Yeah, so I think for me, so I can get tactical around one of the things that was on my sort of growth curriculum over the last probably, it's been there for 2020, it was there, it started in 2019. I believe that leadership, we define leadership as bringing people down a path to their preferred future, right? So I don't earn the right to be a leader of anybody unless I get to know them. I understand where they are and what their preferred future looks like. We all have a preferred future. And so I have that conversation. I understand where you want to go. And I say, hey, Mike, great. This is what your preferred future looks like. I have a very simple and clear path down to that preferred future. Would you like to join that path? Would you like to walk down that path with me? So that's leadership. Now the challenge is, if you could do that on your own and that truly was your preferred future, you would have done that on your own. You don't need someone to get there if you have the path. And if you've been trained or conditioned or were willing to do all the things it took to get there to your preferred future. And what I realized after being maybe frustrated about why I felt like I at times wanted it more than the person that I was helping. Like, gosh, why do I want this goal for them more than they do? Like, why do I show up more than they do? What I realized is I didn't want it any more than they did. I just wasn't skilled in behavioral change, right? So the only reason why I'm not at my preferred future today is my behaviors leading up to it. And so my personal growth journey over the last year and a half has been understanding behavioral change, which means I had to hire a behavioral psychologist. I hired a sports psychologist, right? Because they're probably the best clinically at changing someone's behavior, because sport is all behavior, it's activity, right? But so is business. Like, business is sport too. So for me, personal growth was around understanding behavior, human decision making, and then learning to adjust or coach or consult through behaviors that need to change. And I believe that has been a competitive advantage for our business. So again, I love business, right? So these pillars, truly, I'm not the guy that wants to sit around and meditate all day on just think good thoughts and I'll be spiritual, or think about my relationships and I'll feel love. Like, I'm a get it done kind of person. And so for me, everything has to be tactical. I looked at that and said, leadership seems kind of ethereal. We all talk about it. We read, tons of Maxwell books on it. But the fact is, if my definition is bringing someone down a path, then the only thing that's going to prevent that is behavior. And so I focused on behavioral change. So that's just one example of how do you say that's a pillar and what do you do with it? Hired a behavioral, right, psychologist as a coach, a sports psychologist, and then began to read and study how our brain takes in information, processes information, what we do with it once we process it, and how does that lead to activity or lack of activity.
That's amazing. I've in becoming a leader and starting to take on more leadership opportunities, you want to learn about those things to become a more effective position of power, whatever it is that you want to call it. Now, in understanding behavior from my own research, it's a lot about programming your own personal mind. What are maybe some takeaways from learning about behavior that maybe you could share with us today?
Yeah, I think I think the first part is understanding sort of how humans are conditioned, how we were designed. We were designed to react to fear, right? I mean, we just were. And that's because when danger shows up, We were designed to protect ourselves and continue living. So when danger shows up, our prefrontal cortex immediately says, okay, you're either going to flight or fight. Like it's that fight or flight response. It's I'm either gonna deal with this or I'm going to run. Naturally, 90% of humans will typically run, right? Because they're not going to fight. Most of us will run because that's our natural inkling. Think about, like, I go out in the woods a lot, and there's always a bit of fear. Like I have bear in behind my woods, and coyotes and cougar. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like this morning, right, 5:30, it's dark. As many times as I do it, there's a little bit of fear. And if I saw one, I never have in the morning, but if I saw one, I'd probably be the guy that ran. Not always the best thing to do, by the way, when it's an animal, but we are conditioned that way. It's such the same way in business as well. And so mastering our prefrontal cortex, or our initial reaction or immediate reaction of how we deal with any challenge, is actually a really, really important first step. Because what I've found is we think that, oh gosh, they're just naturally good at this, or man, they just came out of the gate swinging in and they're an awesome real estate agent. And that's probably not true ever. Maybe 1 in 100 is. But the fact is somewhere along the way, those that show up as good actually were conditioned to break through failure, or to deal with no, or to deal with doing something hard. It's conditioning our prefrontal cortex, because how our prefrontal cortex reacts, then it triggers the amygdala, and it triggers these other portions of our brain that then cause action. So as controlled of an actor or action as I can make it, the better off I'm going to be. But interestingly enough, real estate agents in personality typically are responsive human beings. Like they're very, very social. There's a lot of emotion, and so, like, by nature of what attracted us to the industry, right? I get to do something different every single day. Like, we've attracted the majority of people to this industry that we need to do the most work on for behavioral change.
I've never thought about it like that.
You know what? The easiest way to say, almost the easiest way to explain that, and I read this in the Almanac of Naval. Naval Ravikant, one of the I think the greatest investors of our time. And I love Buffett, by the way, but the greatest investor of our time, and largely because of this. Like, Buffett's a value investor, right? Like, he's a studier. He makes the most brilliant decisions based on, at times, years of research and study, and investing in companies that have this long track record. Naval, I think he has invested in 8 unicorns now. Like, investors, like, they go their whole careers waiting for that unicorn, that company that's gonna get to $1 billion evaluation privately. Like, and most times they'll never ever find it. Naval's found 8. Like, brilliant investor with a whole lot of data. And so he studies people. Like, and so that's why I love him. He's a studier of people and understanding behavior. And he feels like, if I study people and I understand who the CEO is or who the founder is, then I'll know whether to invest. But he says this, I don't think he was the first person to say it, but I read it from him. He says, do the easy thing now, have a hard life later. Do the hard thing now, have an easy life later. And I read that maybe 8, 9, 10 months ago. And man, I must say that 3 or 4 times a week to real estate agents or business owners. And it's so true. Like, we go to easy, like we get a wall, or we get pushed back, or something's difficult, and we always choose easy. It's our natural inclination. It doesn't matter how driven or motivated you are. Human beings move towards easy, and then we end up with a very difficult life later. Like, we see that, like, with family or friends or coworkers or agents in the industry. They chose easy, hard's on its way. However, those that are able to do hard things today and maybe it's just getting up, right? That's why people say, well, what's so brilliant about, like, all successful entrepreneurs wake up early. It isn't about the waking up early. It's just that that's hard. So they did a hard thing early in the day. And I think the common thread, or what's woven through those individuals, isn't the time that they woke up, but rather they clearly have a history or track record or willingness to do something hard early in the day, which makes their day easier later, their week easier, their month easier, their quarter easier, the year easier, their career easier. So I just think that alone could be our philosophy. And on a mission of building experiential lives, like, you have to be willing to do hard things to have easy or experiential later as well.
Fine too. I was actually having a conversation about this. Tuesday is my one-on-one day, so I'm having these chats all day long. And one of the guys asked me, how do you stay motivated? And I was thinking about it. I didn't have an answer. And I don't every day. It's just, I think by being around people that live and breathe what you just said, I picked up on it over time. And after choosing the hard thing regularly, it becomes a habit. So I can wake up on a Tuesday morning, not feel overly motivated, but because 2 years ago, I got in the habit of making the choice of choosing the hard thing versus the easy thing. Now it's second nature. Now I don't need to be motivated every day because it's just routine.
Oftentimes when I get asked that question,
What's that?
Oh, go ahead.
You go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I was going to say, I love that. When I get asked that question, when people struggle with that, like, gosh, well, how do you make the hard thing easier? Which seems like are there cliff notes to it? Which there never are, but how do you make the hard thing easier? I love the book Triggers, because that book really outlines, like, what is getting in the way of doing the hard things? Like, what in our world is triggering us not to do it? And can we set ourselves up? Like, can we orchestrate triggers? And I think the author's name is Goldsmith. But can we orchestrate triggers in our world that can actually at least build those habits, or get us to do that one activity, or stop doing that one activity? Typically, we're one activity away from where we want to be, truly. Like, it's just one thing that either gets in the way or causes us to take that first step. So I love your perspective on, I don't have to be motivated every day. It's just, I've done certain things so long that actually they've become easy, just like any habit.
So one question that I had for you, obviously you've not only created a massive world for people to come into your environment, but now you've partnered up with another really massive real estate business person, Ben Kinney, and created Place Inc. So what are some of the things that led you guys to make that decision? And now, what opportunities do you see coming from having such an expansive network like Place Inc?
Yeah, I think what led us there is a love of two things. It's truly a love of the real estate agent. Both of our worlds and families' history has been affected greatly by real estate itself, by the industry. And we both have spent years around real estate agents, running brokerages, coaching agents, building teams. I'll be honest and say I will not, and anytime I sit down and I may get into business with someone, truly partner with someone, or hire someone, I will look for whether or not they love real estate agents. And I know that that's kind of a weird thing to say, but I think some people are in the industry and they don't love real estate agents. They self-proclaim they don't really love real estate. They just like business. They want to build a big business, and you could do that here, but that's not for me. So it was, number one, the love of real estate agents, and number two, actually loving the consumer. Like, we absolutely believe that every single human being should be on the path of home ownership. Ben's mission, our mission before we joined was to build experiential lives through real estate. His mission was to deliver the dream of home ownership everywhere. Interestingly enough, you combine those two, and it's just perfect in our minds. And so we actually wake up fascinated every day by how do we make this easier? How do we make home ownership, the barrier to entry of home ownership, easier? And so what that has led to, and I'll get to the agent in a minute, but what that has led to is realizing that we need to take control of the value proposition that our company or organization or business platform offers to a buyer, to a seller, to an investor, right? To a builder or developer. And so that is real estate sales and real estate development and real estate mortgage and money and real estate title and escrow and property management and insurance. And like all those things do need to get easier. It's happening. There are plenty of people stepping into that space that actually I truly believe, do care about the consumer, love the customer. And some old minded brokerage models say, oh gosh, we don't like them because they're stepping into the industry. Well, step on in. Like, the industry needs to be changed to make it easier and better for the consumer. Now, the difference is this: we combine that love of the consumer with truly the love of the real estate agent and the industry itself. And so I wake up every day truly and ask myself, how do I make this easier? Like our world, our industry, real estate agents are faced with a lot of big problems. We have operations problems, we have sales problems, we have lead generation problems, we have marketing problems, right? We have database problems for sure. We have technology problems. We have all these problems. And I wake up and say, how do I make each one of those just a little bit easier? Like I've always said, and I got this from Gary Keller, right? An awesome mentor of mine for a long time, but he said one day, years ago, he said, your biggest business opportunity is going to be able to provide simple solutions to complex problems. And that's it. Like the most brilliant businesses, that's all they do. They recently published every single letter that Jeff Bezos has ever written to his shareholders in a book, right? And so you can go and read year after year after year after year after year after year his letter penned to shareholders. Now, shareholders, those that are waiting for a return, right? They want the value of the company to go up. They want him to build something incredibly valuable, and clearly he's done that, incredibly valuable, so they get a return on investment. But you know what? Every single letter there's two things. There's two messages in every single one of those letters. The first message is that he wakes up every day and says it's day one, right? It's always day one, no matter whether I have a $1,000 company, $1 million company, $1 billion company, it's day one. And he stays there in day one because I believe that he cares so much about the consumer. He cares so much about his customer that he wakes up every day and say, how do we make this easier? How do we get this to them faster? How do we give them more choices? How do we drive down prices? And some people will say, well, he's destroying small business, or he's destroying all these other industries. And he sees it differently. He says, I am giving human beings what they want. And in the process, I employ more people than any other company on the face of the planet. So is that a bad thing? And truly his mission is the consumer. So for us at Place, like, we have two loves. It's the real estate agent and making their world easier, because if it's easier, they can do more. If they do more, they will make more. If they make more, guess what? They can give more, and they can live experientially. So that's a huge part of our mission. On the flip side, the consumer, we got to make it easier. We have to deliver better value to the consumer. And guess what? If we do, they will buy houses. And when they buy houses, we believe that that's the path to wealth building. And wealth building allows us to live experientially as well. Like, home ownership is incredibly experiential. And so those two things, like, that is the opportunity. And every single day we improve our value proposition to consumers, and we improve our value proposition to agents, such that when you wake up, you look around and say, oh, guess what? By focusing on those two things, you've grown a ridiculously large business that will continue to scale if done the right way. And it doesn't have to be that big, guys. It could be as small as a solo agent, right? Hey, like, how do I solve simple, like complex problems with simple solutions in my solo practice, or in my team of 3, or in my team of 10? And then I do think we need to wake up and say, is the organization, is the company, is the brokerage that I'm plugged into, if I'm plugged into one, delivering or giving me solutions as an agent, but also thinking about the consumer. Are they thinking about how the consumer interacts online? Are they thinking about how the consumer interacts with mortgage or title, or these other ancillary services to make that process easier for them?
That's amazing. And we are in a digital virtual world, especially now, even more than before. And our industry is physically driven, but now it's become digitally enhanced, right? That's what we're seeing more and more, like through Zillow, all of those different types of like programs that are available. And ultimately, to become the disruptor, like you said, to become like the Amazon of real estate, we have to have access to those simple solutions. Now, one thing that you mentioned too earlier, so Jeff Bezos writes, he had that book of the shareholder letters, and I've also noticed that you do something similar, although like maybe with experiential lives and with your companies, they're not your shareholders per se, but you are in business with a lot of people, and I think it's every week or so, you write a letter to your company,
Yeah.
right? So can you talk a little bit about that and what kind of messages you're aiming for in each of those letters?
Yeah, what's interesting is, and I appreciate you bringing that up, and even recognizing that we do that. It was beginning of March, 2020, when the world began to change, and I couldn't sleep one night. Truly, like I couldn't sleep because there was uncertainty, right? And uncertainty breeds fear, and fear breeds anxiety. And to be honest, I was just anxious, and I didn't know why I was anxious. And so I thought, I'm anxious for my people. Like, we have a big organization and there is a lot of uncertainty. If I feel it, I know that they were going to feel it as well, because my anxiety was around people, but their anxiety was going to be around feeding families, or paying rent, or their mortgage, or their family that they couldn't go see. And so I just wrote a letter to the organization, that first one. And I just said, hey, it's Sunday morning, probably around 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And I just felt like I needed to write to you, so that when you woke up in the morning, you had a message from me. And I sent it, and I got just a really cool reaction from our people. And so the following Saturday, right, that evening, I wrote a letter. And the following Saturday, I wrote a letter. And the following Saturday, I wrote a letter. And I've done it every single week, and plan on doing it every single week. Now, the message, it's built on what's happening in our world at that moment. It's built on the conversations that I've had with my people that week. It's built on what they're excited about, and what they're scared about, and what they're crying about. It's built on what's going on in the world, and how do we both involve ourselves and insulate ourselves from some of the emotion. And so it's a stream of consciousness, but it's a stream of consciousness by design, to lead people down a path of a mission that we've all been signed up for. I believe that our organization has grown not because we have someone out recruiting. In fact, we don't. Our organization has grown because we have just been consistently delivering the message around our mission of living experientially. And I think that more and more business owners wake up after getting wildly successful and missing a big chunk of living, that they realize that, gosh, it would have been much better if we had lived during each phase of our life, instead of saving the living phase to the retirement. Like, we have, I hate, not hate, I don't love that word. I dislike the phrase bucket list, because it's like, man, where are all these buckets? Like, and where are you putting them? And why is something in the bucket? Like, just dump out the bucket and figure it out now. Like, so people have this bucket list, and that's because we have been programmed and raised as children, and especially in the US, guys, where like you go to school until you're 20, and then you go on this 3-year searching phase, and then you get your career, and you have this 30-year money making phase, and hopefully you're saving money, and most people don't, based on the average net worth of the American, and gosh, I think the average net worth of the Canadian is a little bit higher, so congratulations. But then we have retirement. But you know what? If you look at those years, guys, and you realize that what you saved for, you have the worst ROI on life. Like no one would invest in that. And yet we're investing years of our life for what, 7 years at the end of our life to enjoy it. It's so messed up. Like it is a major, major problem. And honestly, I think it hit me. Paul Graham, who started Y Combinator, just an incredible investor, Silicon Valley guy. He wrote a blog post one time, and I don't know how many years ago it was. And he said he woke up one day and realized that all of us have about 30,000 days at best. I mean, right? Average lifespan, 30,000 days. That sounds like a lot. Like when you're counting dollars or counting pennies or counting anything, like that sounds like a lot of like drops in the bucket, right? There's a lot of the 30,000. And then I just thought, well, gosh, how old am I? Right? And let's multiply that by 365. And I think that's a really good like math formula. Well, it's just a multiplication, but math, like it's good for each of us to do that. So for me, like I'm 40 years old and I times that by 365, and man, I've lived like 15,000 of my days. And it was a major wake-up call. Like, fortunately, I got that wake-up call earlier, but for some, even that might listen to this, and maybe they're 45, or maybe they're 50, or maybe they're 35 or 20, it doesn't matter. But when you multiply it by 365, guys, I have 15,000 left. And I began to ask myself, hey, did I live those 15,000? Did I use them? Did I waste them? Did I invest them? Like, what did I do with them? And that mission just got clearer and clearer and clearer. Nobody has a year to waste. And in this industry, a decade goes like that. Oh, I've been doing this for 10 years. Guys, I've been doing it for 20. Like I woke up and I'm like, 2 decades. Nobody has a decade to waste. That's 3,650 days out of your only 30,000. Crazy. It just, perspective for us has changed because of it.
Mind blown. I heard you mention something there. Return on life. I just finished reading this book. It's called Die with Zero.
Oh my gosh.
Have you read it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty cool concept. And it doesn't say go out and blow all of your money and don't spend your money, but it's the thing I got out of it is just like right now when we're young is when you can truly and fully enjoy certain experiences, because we're all waiting. My parents, they work for the government and they have this mindset, we're going to slug it out for 30 years. Once we're done, we're going to retire and enjoy our pension. But there's so many things when you're 60 and you retire that you can't do anymore. And then when you're 70, even fewer. So think how few of those 30,000 days you have from 60 onwards, and your energy levels as time progresses at that age keep getting lower and lower and lower. So your ROI on life, a lot of activities, is lower at that age. I think what you just said makes so much sense.
I think, it's interesting because those that are listening to our conversation today will then go back and say, yeah, but Chris, you said do the hard thing now so the easy life is later. And I want to just come back to that, because it doesn't mean work to the bone now and later you'll get to play. Like that is, I believe in an integrated life. It's so funny because just this morning, one of our partners in Dallas posted a picture, and she's working from her lake house. And she said that what I've learned from Chris is I get to choose when and where I want to work. And if I want to work and choose to, I don't want people to judge me and say, hey, you work too much. And she said, today I'm choosing this as a work day where I choose to work. The challenge, and that to me is an integrated life. I'm not going to tell you that I don't work hard. I'm not going to tell you that, every weekend I just shared with you that I write a letter every Saturday. Guys, that's Saturday. And and it's not written on Wednesday, I think about what I want to write all week, which means every Saturday. Yes, that's work. I guess it could be called that. I just live a very integrated life. And that showed up because I went down to Costa Rica for the first time on business, interestingly enough, and just fell in love with the culture, right? There's a book, Blue Zones, and it says, gosh, Costa Rica, ranks as the happiest country in the world. And people said, well, why? Like, why do they rank happiest, right? I mean, of every country in the world. And when you go down there, you say, really? Like, because they don't have houses, right? Like they don't have a lot, but the three things that they do have, they have health. It's the healthiest, right, and cleanest country in the world. It was named Blue Zones because there's more blue zones or clean water in that country than any other country in the world. They have family. Family to them is just wildly important. It is the most important thing. And they have spirituality, right? They have a strong belief in something bigger than themselves. And those three things make them happiest. Like they don't even have enough teachers for kids. Like that's what kept us going back down there. To help fix that problem. They don't even have enough teachers for kids, and yet they have the highest literacy rate in the world. Costa Rica, really? And that's because they are connected to family, right? They are healthy. They live incredibly long. So if you want to extend your life and get a few extra, maybe to get 34,000 days, 36,000 days, go to Costa Rica. But I love that country because their country seemed to be living a mission that just connected with me so great. And so I started going down there and we started living there part-time, right? This is the first year, 2020. It's the only thing I want back. I want my time in Costa Rica back. But because we haven't traveled down there, but typically we're down there living 3 to 4 to 5 months a year. And what I realized is if I wanted to choose that, I wanted to be able to. I'm not sitting on a beach for 3 or 4 or 5 months out of the year. Ask my team, ask my people. I'm working there, but that's an integrated life. And you're right, like one generation removed from us, I just don't believe had these conversations. The world wasn't set up for them that way. Like my dad, the same thing. He was a lifer at Xerox. He fixed copiers for 50 years. And right now he's in retirement, but the poor man has a bad knee and a bad shoulder and he can't go travel. He can't do anything that he works so hard for. Now, granted, he loves his family and that gives him fulfillment. But I would be more fulfilled if he was able to do more things, if he had just worked less or had created a world where he could work less or work an integrated life while we were growing up together.
That's awesome. One thing I've noticed throughout this conversation, you read a lot. And I've read Blue Zones also. Obviously, we both read Die with Zero. Triggers, I'm going to add that to my list. Why, just through speaking to you, your level of thinking is way up here. And I think it's somewhere both me and Anna would love to be at some point in the future. You pour a lot into yourself, obviously. How much do you read? How have you taken yourself from, say, where you were when I think Anna and myself are 10, 15 years younger than you? How do we get to where you are in 10 to 15 years?
Well, I want to just rephrase a couple things. I don't know that my level of thinking is any different than anybody's. I'm just willing to think, right? I think the minute we say that your level is here and this person's is there, and I know that wasn't your intention, but when we hear it that way, we separate ourselves from the individual that we enjoy being around.
Yeah.
And I just allow myself to think. So that starts with building time to think. I think one of my jobs as a leader or obligations is to be more interesting today than I was yesterday. Because if I stop growing, then at a certain point in time, what that means is I'm only going to attract a certain type of person, and I'm going to get to a place where people have gotten everything that they need or can get from me. And I don't want to be that person because that also means I'm holding them back. So I wake up every day with an obligation to earn the right to be in business with the people that I'm in business with. And the reason why I want them to be in business with me is because they believe that I can help them with a problem that they have, or to change the way that they think. So as I now answer your question, like how much do you read? I state that because be careful. I think reading can be a race, and then we don't retain. Um, I, I, I hold myself accountable to read at least a book a week. And that's as much to learn as it is to change my mind or challenge my thinking on something. So as I think about 2020, I read specific categories. I read a list of books on the brain and behavior. I read a list of books on the future because I wanted to challenge whether or not I was thinking about the future the right way or thinking about it enough. I read a few books on leadership, but different kinds of leadership, right? I read a lot about Churchill this year. I read some military leadership, and a great book on leadership is Range by David Epstein, a phenomenal book. And that's because I wanted to change my thinking about getting ultra focused on just one thing and becoming too good at just one thing. And so I loved the book Range. Then I read some books on focus and efficiency. Why? Because we all get unfocused and all get inefficient. I read some books on money and wealth because I think that people come to our organization to build wealth. So I need to understand it and be able to deliver that. I had a category of just business growth and strategy. Right? And probably one of my favorites in that was Upstream, right? That was business strategy. How do we solve problems today? Well, let's go upstream and figure out where those problems came from yesterday. And then I read a series of books around experiential living. I read Howard Buffett, right? Warren Son's book around 40 Chances. He's a farmer, by the way, right? And so the happiness advantage was an amazing one, right? The joy of movement was an amazing one. So for me, I categorized sort of what I wanted to learn, why I needed to learn it, what I needed to be interested in, and also what I needed to challenge my thinking in, and thus began my reading journey of 2020.
Can you tell us a little bit about what topics you're going to be focusing on for 2021?
So I will continue my fascination with the brain and behavioral change. So that will continue. That'll be a constant. And some of those are always constants, right? Business strategy was a constant. Leadership is always a constant. I will always have some focus and money in there. This year is all around decision making. Like my ultra focus is decision making because here's what I believe. I believe that the people in our world, whether it's in the leadership of our organization, myself, or the real estate business owners within our organization, if they are good decision makers, it's our competitive advantage. I always look for what will be our organization's competitive advantage. A few years back, it was time. A few years back, it was energy. Then three years ago, it was focus, right? Behavioral change. And this year, I believe our competitive advantage will be decision making. So that will be sort of the bulk of my curriculum.
Amazing. I know that you've got a couple courses coming up, right? What do you want to maybe shout those out so that we can put the links in the comments?
Well, really, the only thing that I'm driving right now is, and I will actually roll out my experiential living course through our podcast, Experience Growth. If you just go to our blog, and I'll get you the website so you can maybe put that in there. Our blog actually will link to the podcast. It also links to my reading list every single year. You can look at my reading list for 18, categorized 2019, 2020. I think we've been categorizing it for the last 3 years. Don't get overwhelmed, but you can go by category and say, okay, yes, I want to learn something. These were the 4 or 5 books he read in 2020 on the brain and behavior. But through Experience Growth, we're going to probably in about 45 days launch Experiential Living, the course, which will be an 8-week course around each one of those pillars. And how do we begin building the pillar if it's non-existent, or how do we maintain, sustain, or drive each one of those pillars? Honestly, like I'm always teaching real estate courses. I love that. But my mission course is experiential living and the podcast.
So it's experiencechrissuarez.com. We'll put the link in the comments below. Now, I just want to say, I feel like I've learned from this episode so much. I just have like 5 pages of notes and I could probably keep writing. But from, talking about what's rewarded is repeated to the 6 pillars of experiential living, talking about the brain and behavioral science on understanding people, both in a leadership position and also when facing a consumer. I think there's tons of great tidbits where our listeners can take from this podcast today. Now, one thing that we ask all of our guests, Chris, is who do you know that we should get on this podcast? We want to be in conversation with people that are like-minded, and I'm sure that you might know someone that would benefit from having on this podcast.
I think the right answer to that question is who thinks wildly different than me. So you can get an alternating point of view. If you do not know Katie Benson, I would reach out to her. And the reason why I say that is because she was the one that actually, when I was struggling as a real estate agent 15, 17, 18 years ago, really got me to think like a business owner. My first real estate coach, she actually brought me to Keller Williams as well. We became business partners, 12, 13, 14 years ago. We've launched offices together. We launched expansion together. And that doesn't mean we always agree. And that's what makes her a great partner as well. Like, she challenges the way that I think. I challenge the way that she thinks. We laugh. She throws pens at me often. I like for people to understand people in our world, but also get opposing thoughts from people in our world. And probably was someone that pushed me to understand humans better than anybody, because she's a master at understanding humans and also seeing the best in humans as well. So that would be a great conversation with her. How do you see the best in someone? And probably a real value for people in your audience that are building businesses, that businesses are based on people.
Yeah, I think Katie was actually one of the first people I ever met through your organization. And she just opened up my eyes. She did a call for our YP group. And it was all about how to perceive everyone's perspective of you. So how people can understand your point of view and how you can understand people's perspective as well. So she definitely bring a lot of value. I'm going to reach out to her. Thank you for that. Awesome. Anything else that you want to shout out or plug? We'd loved having you on our episode, and we're super excited for everyone to get to know you a bit more.
No, I'm just happy to be here. Whatever I can do to help out along the way, I'm game to do, and appreciate having me as a guest.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. It's great chatting with you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Take care.